This is all about your kids, all about my children who are in the district. This is all about our staff and their safety and the children in their classrooms. I know that we're a very strong community in Westchester, and we will come through all of this together, and we will get through all of this. Now, this is a very long presentation, and there's a lot of detail I want to cover tonight, so I'd like to get started. First of all, this is being recorded. All of the videos and mics on the Zoom link should be off to protect the bandwidth. We're also streaming this live on a Facebook live stream for people who may not be able to get into this Zoom link. There are QR codes you'll see on screens periodically throughout the presentation. Also, there is a Google Doc that you can click on this link to ask questions throughout the presentation, and we will try to collate them at the end and answer questions at the end. So again, you'll see the QR code. You can use your phone to submit questions, or you can just click on the link through the presentation. We'll show that throughout the presentation several times to ask, put some questions in to be answered at the end. Again, we're being recording this tonight. This presentation will be available on the website after this is over. And the recording will also be put up on the website later on this evening. So thank you again for coming out, and it's my pleasure to go through this information tonight. So here's our agenda for the evening. We want to first talk about some of the considerations that we've been through for opening, some of our critical decision points that we have been using to drive our decisions. I'll give you the recommendations for opening schools this year. Something else we want to make sure that we have in this recommendation is flexibility for families and our flexibility to move in and out of the different phased openings and closings that may take place throughout the year. We've looked at a lot of research and guidance throughout this process. Some of you may have been part of our task force. We had some 450 plus parents and staff who were part of that to help us go through some of the various guidelines we were receiving. I've been attending weekly and biweekly county superintendent meetings since March. Those have extended beyond just Chester County. They have gone to the 4-county area around Philadelphia, as well as superintendents from around the state of Pennsylvania. We have conducted several staff surveys, several parent surveys. We have conducted some student focus groups at our high schools. We've collected comments. We've received thousands of emails, and I have personally tried to respond to almost all of those emails that have come through. Some of our guidance we've gotten, we've used the Centers for Disease Control guidelines. They have come out a couple different times. In fact, a new set of guidelines came out last week there. Pennsylvania Department of Ed and Department of Health guidelines. Some of those have been a little bit nebulous in considerations for us to consider as we write our phased reopening plans for all school districts in Pennsylvania. We work very closely with our Chester County Department of Health in trying to come up with some guidance from them as well. CHOP has put out guidance, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the World Health Organization, and Mid-Atlantic Organization released a study on the coronavirus and some of the things happening there. Our ultimate task here is to open safely for all of our students and staff with plans that we can flex in and out of different delivery models based on what's happening with this virus in our community. So the overview of this entire problem, though, is looking at the Department of Ed requiring each of our school boards to approve a health and safety plan. That is one of the very strong guidelines that has come out of the Department of Ed, as well as our General Assembly out in Harrisburg. All school boards in Pennsylvania have to approve a plan. Our board is expected to approve our plan on Monday, August 3rd. So they are not approving that tonight, but it is Monday, August 3rd. And they are the ones, along with superintendents, that have to take the responsibility for what's in that plan. We've gotten some new guidance just as late as July 20th. We were debating whether 6 feet or 3 feet was okay in terms of social distancing. New guidance came out on July 20th that pushed us to a 6 feet maximum extent possible was the wording in that guidance from the Department of Ed. Each school district's recommended to work with their local health departments. Again, it's local decision making. Our legislators, our Department of Health have said this is a local decision and you need to work with your local authorities to do the best that you can with your process. 6 feet of social distancing. I'll share some pictures in just a minute what that looks like in our schools, but not all students can fit into our schools with 6 feet of social distancing at the same time. That would require some hybrid or split schedule. And the prevailing medical guidance from our national organizations is to achieve 6 feet of social distancing. As we go through this process and looking at all of the different decision-making points that we have to consider, certainly the state guidance is something that we have to look at and consider. That's one of our decision-making points here. Community opinions and needs. I will tell you that it's extremely mixed. Everybody has a different opinion. Everybody has lots of thoughts. And I appreciate all of the information that people have been sending me and our administrative team in terms of what they think we should do, information and presentations they've heard, medical advice that they've heard. I know our local medical community has been very active in sending medical information to us as we sift through all of that. Feasibility is another big piece. As we look at the different options and ideas, we have to understand how feasible some of that is. Many people will send comments in. I've heard comments that, hey, why don't you just do this? Or can't teachers do this and this? And when we look at the practicality of some of the things that people want us to do, it is extremely difficult. And some of it is just not feasible with the other conditions and parameters that we're trying to work around. Our staff support obviously is critically important. Our teachers and our administrators and our support staff and our custodians all in the buildings, we need them to be healthy and positive. We need them to be able to come in and work with our students. So staff support is another decision-making point that we have to consider. And finally, I think what's driving a lot of this is the trajectory of the virus. What are infection rates in the community? If it's going down, can we relax some of the restrictions that we have? If it's going up, do we need to tighten restrictions? And that becomes the flexibility piece. And again, because this is a new virus that we are still learning much about, the science of it, it has been very tricky to follow and see what's happening. Some parent survey data. I'll share a couple pieces of the survey data that we just recently did over last weekend. About 94% of our families did fill this out. Over 8,000 people responded. And looking at a return to school model, about 40% said, yeah, brick and mortar, bring them all in. About 40% said do some kind of a hybrid model. And about 20% were saying, well, a cyber model might be the way to go. So again, some mixed data on that. We asked about childcare needs because we certainly understand that while schools are not childcare facilities, we do provide a place for your children to grow and learn while many of our families are at work. So we wanted to ask about childcare needs. This is also something we brought up to our legislators that bringing all the students back and bringing the economy back, childcare is something that is not getting enough discussion. So we're trying to get some data on what are some of the childcare needs out in our community, if we can try to help, try to facilitate some of that. Just a brief snippet of our staff survey. About half of our staff filled out this survey. This is a question about being trained, adequate training for remote online learning. About 75% of our staff are not concerned, maybe just a little bit concerned in terms of the training that they have to provide some remote online learning. We know that is going to be a big part of this plan, and that we want to make sure that our staff is comfortable with teaching online. We learned a lot last spring with our remote learning, and we continue to learn and grow from that to try to improve. Assistance for their own children with remote learning while they're working. Many of our staff members have kids of their own, and as they come into school to teach, is they're concerned about whether they're going to be able to have childcare, whether they're going to be able to manage their own households with their own children. About 35% have some concern about that. Some of the questions that we've had along the way. How many students can we fit in classrooms if we have 3 or 6 feet? This was something that we went out and did. This picture on the left is where we have the desks are 3 feet apart. As a student sits in these desks, it is about 4 feet from nose to nose, so we can get about 4 feet of social distancing. Desks are 3 feet apart. Many of the rooms can get between 28. Some of the larger rooms can get 30 desks in there. They're all facing the same direction. So that's what it would be, about 3 feet. When you go to 6 feet, you can see that it is 6 feet nose to nose. Here's a 6 feet of a measurement here. So it's middle of the desk to middle of the desk. So the desks aren't quite 6 feet apart. They're about 5 feet apart, but nose to nose, we get 6 feet. We can get between 14 and 15 desks in a classroom, and this is what it would look like. Some other people have asked a question about Westchester Cyber. If enough people would just choose the Westchester Cyber option, wouldn't you have enough to get everybody back in? So if half the students chose that, you have plenty of space to bring half the other kids back. That is true. We would have the space at that point to do that. But if we've got to reduce the class sizes in half in order to get 6 feet of social distancing, whatever we have left in terms of people not choosing a cyber option, we've got to divide them in half, and we have to add additional staff. So I just did a calculation for just looking at just the elementary schools. We have a little over 5,300 elementary students, 239 teaching positions for that. So if we took half of them and we put 27 in a cyber class, we need about 100 cyber teachers. So that leaves about 139 teachers for the rest of the brick and mortar kids. So if we have to go to a maximum class size of 14, that means we need 192 teachers to cover those classes, which gives us a shortfall of about 53 teachers, or $4 million in expenses. So I know that a lot of people have asked that. I did respond to many people about that, and I felt like it was important to share some of the calculations, and that's just looking at our elementary students. Some other asked the question: can we bring students in just AM PM? Just if you don't have the space to do it, can you bring them in early in the morning, have a morning shift and an afternoon shift? That's a concept that was done years ago in this district when it was very crowded schools. Prior to building East High School, I think when Henderson was getting crowded, there were split schedules. And when Henderson burned down in 1948 was another time there were split schedules. So the district has a history of that. But when you do the calculations and how do we make this happen, there are some other regulations that get in the way. We still have to provide transportation to 147 private and charter schools that are out in the community. So when we're looking at transportation for our students, whatever we provide for our students, we have to provide for all of those other private and parochial schools and the charter schools. It becomes a very difficult matrix when we're trying to get everybody home, go pick everybody back up, and bring them all back in. Now, our size gets in the way. With a 75 square mile school district, we need about 3 to 3.5 hours to transport the morning students back home and then pick up the afternoon students to come in. This extends the teacher day from about 7.5 hours to about 10 hours. That is not contractually in our agreements. That's a very long day with 2 sets of kids. And that doesn't even include all the before and after school prep and grading of papers that our teachers do as well. That's just physical time in the building. So it adds a significant transportation and or staffing cost. If we want to shorten that time, we have to add more buses. I would say that it is difficult to get drivers in the best of times. And right now, with a lot of uncertainties and unknowns, that still remains a challenge for our transportation contractors in terms of having enough drivers. We also we can't shorten the day. We can't have fewer hours because our General Assembly has said you have to meet the 900 and 990 hours. 900 is for elementary school students and 990 is for secondary. We typically have many more hours than that, about 1,100 and about 1,050. So we do have some additional hours but not nearly enough to cover the needs we would have in terms of getting those covered for the school code. So those are just some examples of some of the questions and some of the data that we tease out. We have dozens of others. So if you send in questions about that and we've given you some responses, or you think we haven't considered it, there are many challenging things we've considered with trying to bring students back. It is really an impossible choice. All of these options are stressful. They're stressful to the students. They're stressful to the staff. I will tell you that it is not the way schools were set up to be. Schools are not places for kids sitting in rows. That is not a best practice in teaching. It is not the place for kids to be wearing masks. That is not a best practice in teaching. It is not a place to be social distancing. We are a place where we encourage collaboration, communication, and a lot of working together with our kids. So each option has some benefits. There's many challenges with the different options. There are some feasibility concerns with some of the options, and again, that was one of the key critical decision points we have to look at. The scientific knowledge is emerging on a daily basis. There are new studies about this coronavirus. Every day seems to be coming out. There are frequently some changes of opinions and guidance. The CDC has changed opinion a couple times. The American Pediatric Association has put out a couple different opinions. And this whole battle between and balance, we've got to get kids back in school versus we want to keep people and children safe from being exposed to the virus. We all care very much about the welfare of our students, staff, and families, and we want to make the best possible choice. So, but it is not easy. So 3 main options that we did consider. We actually started working to begin the school year. In fact, all the districts in Chester County were trying to make a commitment to bring all of our plans in very similarly. We know that we have staff members living in different communities. So the borders don't just end in Westchester or Downingtown or Garnet Valley or Great Valley. We have staff members living in those districts, and we have staff people who are working in those districts who are parents as well. But we want to look at beginning of the year with 3 to 5 feet of separation and offer also a cyber option for people. We were working on that until the 6 feet of social distancing came. And we were not able to bring everybody in if we can't get the 6 feet of social distancing. But it does provide the best educational continuity of bringing people in, albeit with masks and some other pieces to it. But it would be able to get us all the students in at one time. Looking at beginning the year fully online for the entire district, there are some educational challenges with that. There are many challenges for parents with that. It does eliminate concerns about spreading of the virus in school, but it does not eliminate all the concerns about spreading the virus out in the community. We were looking at a hybrid model, 2 or 3 days a week or 2 to 3 days a week virtual. It does provide some student-teacher contact. It does have some educational logistical challenges, in particular where teachers are working with students in school and also on a cyber link. So there are some challenges with the hybrid model as well. So it brings me to a decision that I'm going to recommend to our school board on Monday. I'm going to recommend that we begin with a remote learning 2.0, where we start all of our schools virtually online. Now this is improved over last spring's remote learning 2.0. There's more synchronous live instruction that will be part of that. We will have instruction recorded for flexibility, for students' ability to come back and watch again to give some flexibility. We also will offer a Westchester cyber program. Now this program is more flexible. It's more asynchronous at the secondary level. It does provide a lot more flexibility in terms of students being able to pace at their own work at their own pace. And we'll explain some of the differences in those 2 programs here in just a minute. We also want to reassess regularly. We need to evaluate our change, any change that we want to potentially make. We're going to take a first look at evaluating this at the Thanksgiving break, which means we'll start online remotely up until on or about the Thanksgiving break, which is right about the end of the first marking period. It's just before the end of the first trimester for elementary schools. So how do we go about making this decision? And I will tell you that I have been wrestling with this for months. And I've heard from a lot of people about it. Again, lots of different opinions. And it has been a very, very difficult and trying time to come to that recommendation. But I would tell you that in the absence of some solid state direction, it becomes very difficult when we're trying to decide what these medical positions are, and we're making these medical decisions. But we simply can't risk the health and safety of our students or staff. So safety is driving this decision first and foremost. For the last 4 days in Chester County, we have recently seen cases continue to rise. And West Goshen Township was just recently cited as one of the state's new hot spots in terms of the percentage of people living there. I believe it's 6.5% have now been tested positive for coronavirus. The state has warned if the cases aren't under control, that we may have to close schools. And there are some other parts of the state that are seeing cases rise as well in Pennsylvania. I think today there were 1,100 new cases in Pennsylvania. So as we've been on a downslide since the high in mid-April, since about early July, we have gone about halfway back to where we were at our highest time in the month of April. We don't have medical backgrounds to interpret the guidance. These are, again, medical decisions that we are being asked to make. Our administrative team, particularly me as the superintendent, having to make this recommendation to our school board, and then our school board having to vote on that. The science is evolving. We're learning more about the coronavirus. This is a novel virus. It's new. We learn more about how it's spread, about how people carry it. I know just this past Monday, after the Phillies home opener weekend, one of the baseball teams had 12 people come down with coronavirus, and now they're starting to cancel some of the baseball seasons. So we're learning a lot about how this virus spreads and how it can just show up just about anywhere. There's a lot of pressure from many audiences. And again, there's a lot of people who are concerned about health and safety, a lot of people concerned about how we're going to bring students back safely, how we're going to keep our staff safe. So there's been a lot of audiences and a lot of different opinions about that. I'll tell you that this, again, for me, has been a very gut-wrenching decision, but we want to do the best that we can for our students, our staff, and our families. These were, again, the guiding principles that drive our decision. Safety first. Again, that is the top priority. Every one of these models carries some risks, and remote learning has some of its own. But safety of students and staff is driving this decision first and foremost. Another guiding principle that I don't think we can ignore and we need to put at the top of the list is equity. We know that not all students and families have the same access to technology, or have the same needs, or have the same resources. So as we go through this, how do we make it work? Equity has to be one of the things that we consider in terms of being as successful as possible. We want to monitor student needs. There's a lot of assessment that we're planning to do. In fact, as we were looking at a hybrid model, one of the big reasons to bring kids back was to get some face time with students before we had to go out into a remote format. We knew that was probably more than likely going to happen. And we wanted to get as much information about where students are with their learning from last spring so that we can meet them where they are and move them forward. So we still have to do that. We have to do that. It's a challenge, but we will still continue to monitor student needs, particularly at the beginning of the school year. We do want to bring our low incident disability students in. These are some of our students with the highest need. We will be bringing these students in every day. We have about 190 students in the district. We actually started a summer program. We offered that for some of our parents and all of our parents and families with students who have these low incident disabilities children in their educational plans. About half took us up on that. We have been running that. We're in our 4th week now. We're social distancing. We are masking. We are using other PPE such as gloves, and we have done that. We also offer a virtual program for students this summer. We were one of the few districts to do that, but with a small group of kids, we can implement the social distancing. As this pandemic improves, our goal is to bring back the youngest students first as we start to prioritize. So in addition to bringing some of our highest need children back, we want to look at our youngest children back as we see changes with the virus in the community, and we're able to do that. There is a need for flexibility to phase in and out of this hybrid of full-time or in-person learning or remote learning 2.0. So we have to have flexibility in our plan, which means we need to evaluate and assess where we are. Our first big evaluation assessment will be right about the Thanksgiving break time to see if we want to continue with full-time. Do we want to start phasing back in a hybrid model, or is it at that time perhaps there's a vaccine, and perhaps we can then start bringing all of our students back full-time if we're fortunate enough to be in that position as well. I would tell you that bringing students back, even as we start to evaluate it, some people may think that, well, we just go turn the lights on and get the buses rolling. So if we decide on a Friday we want to bring students back on a Monday, it is not that easy. Because we are not going to start with transportation, we will have drivers not available. We're going to need to reorganize drivers. We may have some of our own staff that won't be available. We've got to reorganize some of our own staff to come back in. We have to prepare our classrooms and materials that may be coming in and out of the schools. So there's a lot to do, and it can't just be flip a switch. So once we start doing that assessment, we may need a couple of weeks to pull the trigger and fully bring in everybody. But we will communicate that and that process and that timeline as we get near that. Some of the state guidance that we've looked at, I will tell you that since May 19th, we have had 6 different sets of state guidance, 6 different sets. And a lot of it is nebulous, things in there that school districts have to consider when feasible. There's guidelines when reasonable. And basically it is all up to the local school boards and superintendents to sort through all of that. This novel coronavirus, it's new. And we're still learning about its impacts. So the science of this is emerging, that even some of the national guidance continues to change as more studies come out every day and every week about what this virus does, how to treat this virus, how it travels, how it responds. So the science is still emerging. I would say again, for weeks, superintendents, we've been asking to meet with the Department of Health. And this week we had the opportunity to do that on Monday with a brief phone meeting. We did have some limited opportunities to ask questions, but again, the emphasis was that this is a local decision and that we're the ones to make the choices. We're also the ones that have to accept the responsibility for the plan. So the remote learning 2.0 schedules, so again, going back to some of the guidance, again, this is different than the emergency spring remote learning that we did. We've spent a lot of time to prepare some thoughtful trainings for teachers. Many of our teachers have been attending them this summer. We have a full line of courses between now and the beginning of school year, and also the time when all of our teachers are required to come back on August 17th for the new teachers and August 24th for all of our teachers. We'll be focused on remote learning. We have to meet the 180-day minimum requirement. 900 hours is the elementary requirement and 990 at secondary. So we have to make sure that our hours in the remote time will add up to those hours, and the days will add up to the 180 days. So all the online work will count toward those hours. It's up to our school board as part of their plan to approve an affirmation agreement that any online hours will count toward those hours, and we have to submit a calendar to the Department of Ed that indicates that. There'll be a combination of synchronous, these live sessions, and some asynchronous recorded session learning. It will be much more synchronous than the Westchester Cyber program, but that program too will have some synchronous learning in it. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So what will this, a couple questions about at-home learning. How will students access the curriculum? We have a learning management system. Schoology is our main learning management system. Last year, K-2, we also used Seesaw. So teachers will provide a balance of some synchronous and some asynchronous instruction. Any of the synchronous instruction, we will record that so that there is more flexibility for parents and students who may have trouble with some of their own schedules in terms of accessing at the times when those synchronous classes are scheduled. Will students have access to the teachers on a daily basis? Yes. Again, our teachers will be conducting live instruction at every day. And they'll be able to respond to students. They'll be able to follow up either through email or separate small groups that will be scheduled. What happens if students need help with some work? Again, teachers will do some small group instruction, some individual support time. We have support service staff in our buildings that will schedule some time. We have reading specialists, math specialists, counselors. They will all be available to schedule time to provide some help with student work. And will kids be in front of a screen all day? No. We want to provide some screen breaks, and as we put out those schedules, you will see there will be screen breaks throughout the learning day. Again, if you have questions, here's the QR code up on the screen. Also, there is a link if you want to submit a question to the Google Doc. You'll see that up on the screen now. Again, the QR code with your phones, and then the link with the Google Doc. So what is the difference between Remote Learning 2.0 and Westchester Cyber? Westchester Cyber is again more asynchronous. There's a lot of recorded lessons in that. The Westchester Cyber program also will draw from across the entire district. It's not just going to be coming from one school. So you may have students from all 10 elementary schools in a first grade class. You may have students from all 3 middle schools and all 3 high schools in a middle or a high school class. It does provide more continuity, as the rest of the district may have to transition in and out of these different phases, remote or hybrid. So for parents who want to just lock into a standard program, not have to worry about coming in and coming out. If we come in, do we have to go out again if we see viruses spiking? So it's a little bit different. It gives you a little bit more flexibility on how to do the work. Lots of support in that program, and they are all Westchester area school district teachers in that program. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our elementary cyber principal, Dr. Rebecca Everly, to go through the remote learning and the cyber differences in a little more detail. Dr. Everly?
Thank you, Dr. Scanlon. The two programs that our administrative team is presenting tonight and proposing that we move forward is the cyber program, the Westchester Cyber Program, and also our Remote Learning 2.0. And so if you take a look on the right side here with the Westchester Cyber Program, as Dr. Scanlon mentioned, there are certainly some similarities with both the cyber program and the Remote Learning 2.0, and we're going to spend the next few slides really capitalizing on the differences so that you can really get a better understanding of these programs as you make the decision that's best for your family. And so the Westchester Cyber Program is definitely less synchronous, so it's more asynchronous so that our families can really have that flexibility to complete assignments, for perhaps example on the weekend or in the evenings, or maybe your children get up early and you want to do some of those learning activities first thing before you need to start work. So it really allows that flexibility for our families. Also, as Dr. Scanlon mentioned, it is going to be taught by our wonderful Westchester Area School District teachers, though it may not be a teacher from your home school. So we are going to mirror the class size guidelines that we utilize in the school buildings. And so for kindergarten and first, that's 25, second and third, 27. And fourth and fifth, it's 30. So for example, if we have 40 students in our fifth grade cyber program, we would break that into 2 sections, 20 and 20. And I will do my best to make sure that we are placing students from the same school buildings in those classes together. I know many families are talking about different pods and things they'd like to do together as a school community. And our cyber program, we are still going to be encouraging our families to stay connected to their home school as well. Our Westchester teachers will be teaching the same exact curriculum in both our cyber program as well as our remote learning 2.0 program. And so some of the differences that we'll go through in our cyber program, you are going to see one live daily class meeting. Every day our classroom and our teachers are going to come together, and we want to build that community that's so important to us. And so we'll be focusing on that. And you'll see that's a similarity in the remote learning 2.0. And then in the cyber program, we are going to offer one live daily math or English language arts. So when we take a look at a weekly span schedule of the cyber program, you'll see they essentially will alternate. So you won't have a live math or ELA lesson every day. However, as Dr. Scanlon mentioned, we will be recording those lessons so that you'll be able to view them at a flexible time for your family. Additionally, we'll have one live or pre-recorded special area class each day, and that's for both our cyber and our remote learning. And then for both of our programs, you will receive support from our teachers throughout the day. So again, the curriculum is lined Westchester School District curriculum in both of these. And the big difference that you'll see in the remote learning 2.0 is that we will have one live math and English language arts lesson per day. You can also, again, expect those live daily class meetings to make sure we're building relationships and building our community. And then you could also anticipate 2 to 4 live small groups throughout the week. And so that will give our teachers really the ability to provide differentiated instruction for our students. And similarly, you'll see one live or pre-recorded special area class, one live or pre-recorded science or social studies per day. And again, our teachers are going to be able to support our students throughout the day. So this is just a sample elementary schedule. Again, just a sample that you may see. And this particular would be a first grade. As you can see, the special area time frame is from 1 to 1:45. So this is a sample first grade lesson or weekly or daily schedule, excuse me. So again, we have our live morning meeting check-in. Now the check-in could happen first thing in the morning. It could happen in a writing conference. It could happen in the afternoon. But in this schedule, in this daily example we have that one morning check-in to build a community again. Then you'll see the live ELA lesson. And again, because we're in a remote learning, this is our remote learning daily sample, you'll see both the live ELA and the live math lesson. Additionally, from 10 to 11 in this block on this sample, we have a teacher-led live small group reading. And so again, you could see this anywhere from 2 to 4 times throughout the week based on teacher preference and how they are going to differentiate to support the various needs within their classroom. Again, you can see our specials will be live or pre-recorded lessons that you can view. Of course, we want to make sure we're building in movement breaks for our kiddos. And then again, you'll be able to view a pre-recorded or a live science or social studies lesson daily. And again, any of our follow-up learning activities in K1-2 will be through Seesaw, and 3-4-5, we will utilize Schoology. And so here, this is a lot of information. We wanted to make sure we included it so you can reference it back, but we wanted to give you a glimpse of what the week could look like. And again, we want to emphasize that the remote learning 2.0 will certainly be more rigorous than what we experienced in the spring. Our Westchester teachers truly did a fantastic job flipping the system in an emergency setting. They really did a great job, and we know that. But as we move forward, we've had time to plan, and with the PD regulations, we definitely need to increase those synchronous lessons in our remote learning. So if, again, you kind of span the course of this week, you'll see those live check-ins every day. You'll see a math and a live lesson every day. And you will see small group differentiated instruction 2 to 4 times throughout the week. Again, the special area and our social studies and science could be live or pre-recorded. So now we flip to our cyber sample schedule. So you can see here, and again, this is going to be more asynchronous so that we provide that flexibility for our families. All of our live lessons will be recorded so that you can view those later. Again, we know the importance of building the relationships with our students. And so we are going to have that live daily check-in in our cyber program as well. We will have either math or ELA live each day. And on the opposite days, when you have your live ELA lesson, your math will likely be some type of pre-recorded lesson, and then your follow-up activities that you'll be able to submit through our learning management system. And again, this is the weekly span of our cyber. And so again, the real differences that you'll see between our cyber elementary K-5 program and the remote learning is the remote learning, you are going to experience more live instruction. We have both math and ELA daily. And the cyber program, it's more asynchronous. We will record those live lessons that we have. And also with the cyber program, as Dr. Scanlon mentioned, if you opt into that program, your educational experience really will go uninterrupted throughout the entire school year. So if there are changes and guidance in what we're doing, and we flip back into a hybrid, for example, our cyber students, their programming will really go uninterrupted throughout the course of the school year. I'll turn it.
Thanks, Dr. Everly. For the secondary options for the difference between remote learning and our Westchester Cyber Program, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sokolowski, our Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for being here. As Dr. Everly shared and Dr. Scanlon, we will be recommending to the board on Monday night. The options for secondary students will also be remote learning and the Westchester Cyber Program. And what I would like to do is just speak from this from a secondary lens and talk about the programs in terms of their differences. But it is important to note that both programs do include online instruction. The first thing that I want to talk about, the Westchester Cyber Program, students will be assigned to Westchester area school district teachers, but it will be the case that students from our 3 middle schools will be in one class together, and from our 3 high schools will be in one class together. Whereas on the remote learning side, our students will be assigned to the regular brick and mortar teachers with their regular classmates if we were in live instruction. And the advantage of that is that upon returning back to school, our students will be able to make that transition seamlessly. The other difference is really the mode of instruction. The Westchester Cyber Program, as we've expressed earlier, this is going to be asynchronous. It is going to be self-paced learning for students, but that provides a lot of degree of personalization for our students. On the other side, for remote learning, because we're going to be, and I'll talk about this in a moment, but it really improving our remote learning schedule for students, that will be a balance. It will be a blend of live instruction as well as recorded instruction for students. And so for the Westchester Cyber Program, you will see that there are live opportunities for students to engage with teachers and classmates, but that will be more of an emphasis in remote learning. Remote learning also would also express in difference to last spring, the accountability for students, and in teaching them all of the essential learning will be there. We will be grading students with traditional grades, and students will be accountable for attendance. So the next slide, I'd like to show you what a daily schedule would look like for a remote learning student. So as I look at this schedule, it would appear that we have a 10th grade student at either East, Henderson, or Ruston. And we see that we have English 10 honors, And the student on this day was required to check in with the teacher during that class period and then engage in a Schoology discussion online with his or her classmates. We see that the second block of the day is chemistry honors. And it would appear that the student the day before completed a lab and perhaps a virtual lab with classmates. And then during this day was required to upload that lab report onto Schoology. An improvement over last year's schedule for remote learning, and this is especially true at our high school, where it can occur that for students, they may not be able to get a lunch regularly. So we wanted to make sure that during the remote learning for next year, that we're providing a large amount of time in the middle of the day for students to be able to take a break from the screen. It also provides a little bit more flexibility for our teachers in terms of if they would like to have live check-ins with students outside of their class time. We see that the third block in the afternoon, it's a great sociology course, one of our fantastic social studies electives. And we see here that we have a live check-in, but the check-in here is for a whole class discussion for the student to be able to interact with his classmates and his or her teachers. And finally, we see the final course, Algebra 2 Accelerated Honors. And this is a great feature of Schoology that our teachers have been using for years, but the teacher is assigning a Schoology assignment in real time that the student then is able to get feedback during this block of time. So one other thing I would point out about our block schedule that will be an improvement over last year is that every course will have a window of time over the course of a 5-day cycle at our high school or 6 days at our middle schools. So we're planning, and we have done a lot of consideration in terms of looking back at what we could improve from the spring. So we have a better schedule. We have our teachers that are fully engaged in professional development this summer. And we also will be requiring students more rigorously with attendance and with assessments so that we can maintain the learning for our high school and our middle school students. The next slide is showing you a Westchester Cyber sample schedule, and I am going to turn over to our lead cyber administrator, Dr. Kristen Barnello, who has been working on this program really since she's been here in Westchester, and she's going to share with you the details of a sample cyber schedule for our high school or middle school students.
Thank you.
Dr. Barnello?
Thank you. Yes, so we've been working on our Westchester Cyber program formally for over a year now. It is part of our strategic plan for our 6 through 12 students, both at middle school and high school. We have a lot of visions of that. Certainly our plan has been accelerated given the global crisis that we are in right now. But I did present to you this evening what a sample schedule could look like for a cyber student at the secondary level. So I just want to walk through a few different things. As noted earlier, this schedule is way more flexible for students. We are really focused on a student-paced learning environment with that support of our amazing Westchester Area School District teachers using our curriculum. So if you look here, I've spelled out 2 different days, so Monday and Tuesday, what that week, beginning of the week could look for your child. So if you look, there are opportunities for live interaction. So for example, in social studies, the student is working on an essay about cultural diversity, and they would be conferencing with their teacher about the essay throughout the week, and that would be by appointment. So the teacher and the student would find a time that is mutually agreeable for them to work one-on-one, just as our teachers do in the building. Another example would be in Spanish class, where the students may log in live to have a class discussion on verb tenses and to practice their speaking skills in the target language. To follow that up, the student would have a self-paced activity focused on vocabulary activities. You'll notice on the schedule, Monday afternoon, the student is spending a lot of time working on their science lab. So that student might spend about 90 minutes because they want to take the lesson on mitosis. They might want to do the virtual lab and then write their lab report all in one sitting, because some students and some adults do like just taking a task and working from the start to the end. Now on Tuesday, you'll notice that that child is not engaged in science, and that's okay. That's part of the flexibility of our program. What they're doing instead is that graphic design. So they might log on and see the live lesson with Miss Dooley, our graphic design teacher, or they might view a recorded lesson that she had previously done live with other students in the class. The student would view that, learn about the curvature tool in our Adobe software, and then work on their project. So You'll see here that there is a lot of flexibility, but even though our students are learning online, they're not learning in isolation. They will still have interactions with their peers. They will still have interactions with their teachers. We do have programs in place and activities in place to build that socialization for all of our students in the cyber program. Early on, we made the very conscious decision to keep our students rostered in their home buildings. We know that that sense of community, those extracurricular activities, the sports and the clubs are so important to the students' development and just their experience as secondary students. We wanted them to stay part of that community. So while your students will be enrolled in our Westchester Cyber program, you will continue to receive communication from your home building. Another question that I'm often asked is about levels. As you probably know, at our secondary schools, we have a variety of levels to support our students at their academic need. For example, in this class in English, you'll see that the students are asked to complete their IXL reading assessment. That is one tool that we use just to measure students' progress on things like comprehension in their English class. The students are then given an independent novel reading and their response journal. Those novels will be tailored to the student's level. So a student who is recommended and enrolled in an honors versus accelerated honors or college and career prep would have a text that is appropriate to their level. The teacher would be able to provide whole group instruction on specific activities, but then in Schoology, we can very quickly break students out by their level and provide them with the resources and assessments to make sure that they are engaging with our content at their appropriate level of rigor. We know this is a very difficult decision for you. We hope that we're presenting the information in comparison our remote 2.0 in our cyber program. We are asking that families make a decision by August 7th. So certainly if you have any questions about our K-5 program, please do reach out to Dr. Rebecca Eberly. And any questions about our 6 through 12 program, please reach out to me, Kristen Barnello. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen, Bob, and Rebecca for going over the detail of that. There's been an awful lot of work put into Remote Learning 2.0 to improve that from last year, as well as our cyber programs. And again, as Dr. Barnello said, we'll be sending out information to parents to make a decision by August 7th so that we can properly staff all of the programs as we start the school year. Just to kind of recap some of the components of the plan, that there is a choice between the Remote 2.0 or the cyber program. You saw that there was a block schedule for both middle and high school. That is so that we can get bigger chunks of time. So courses will run every other day on those blocks. The kids will not have an 85-minute block period for 8 periods a day. It will be 4. The combination of synchronous and asynchronous, that again is some of the flexibility in 2.0 as well as the cyber, Westchester Cyber. We do want to have our, as I said, our low incident disability students, as long as we're in the green and yellow phase by the governor, we're allowed to have people into our schools and students into our schools for some services, just as we are doing this summer. So we want to, when necessary, utilize that for some of the students that need those services that we can't typically provide as easily at home, where we can do more easily in some of the schools. We are also working to deliver service to our English learners. We are looking into providing some of that. We have students without internet access. We are working to make sure that we can provide access for all of the learning for all of our students. And again, that gets back to that equity component that we really need to look at and be sure that we're providing service to some of the students and families that may not be able to have it as easily as others. Child care providers, we've also been working with local child care providers to provide some affordable child care options for our staff and for our parents. So we have a Child's Place who provides services in our schools. We are working closely with them as our schools are available, that perhaps we can set some of our buildings up as child care places for working parents, and certainly for our staff who are also working with their other students in class. They all have access to Wi-Fi in those buildings, so accessing the schoolwork and being staffed by some people who can help. We are trying to work on that piece as well. We have an internal reopening team. These are our implementation teams of staff that we're continuing to meet throughout the summer. We have a number of issues that we're still working through. Athletics. Some people have asked about athletics. Are we going to run the sports programs this fall? The Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association, the PIAA, provides guidance on whether we're running sports or not. They have not made decisions, and I don't expect that they are going to make decisions about whether we run our athletic programs. That will also most likely be a local decision. We have our task force group that was working on athletics and after school activities, working on some other alternate activities if we're not going to be able to run these sports teams. I'm going to say it's going to be very difficult to run soccer and football, lacrosse, field hockey, those teams, if we don't have our students in school. However, we have been running this summer health fitness component of our athletic plan, which the board did approve back in June. So we do have workouts taking place outside. There's social distancing taking place. So my guess is we would end up putting something together in terms of keeping our athletic teams able to work out as long as it's outside with the social distancing guidelines that we have in place currently. So we will develop more of that. The fall sports officially begin on August 17th. Heat acclimation week begins on August 10th. So we need to very quickly finish up that plan in terms of what we're going to be doing. Performing arts and specials, we're working with our teachers on that in terms of how some of that can be worked out. Extracurricular clubs, we certainly can run some of them. We can do them virtually. So we will work with our staff on setting up what some of those after school clubs can be for students once they finish their work during the day. Kindergarten screening, this is a big one that, again, we'd much rather do it in person, face to face. We are still working with our elementary principals on how we can best set up the screening process for our new students coming in kindergarten. So we will have more information about that once we finish that screening process. Now for pupil services, to talk a little bit about how we meet the needs of some of our children that we believe we can bring in and provide services. I'm going to ask our Director of Pupil Services, Dr. Leanne Ranieri, to walk through some of that.
Hey, Dr. Scanlon, and thank you I'm very happy to be here tonight to talk a little bit about what we're doing in pupil services. As Dr. Scanlon mentioned earlier, we are going to invite students with low incidence disabilities to be able to come to the brick and mortar setting 5 days a week. When we talk about those students, they are students that are currently in our life skills, autistic support, or multiple disability support, and our elementary emotional support students that are currently at Mary C. House. Those are students that really struggled the most in the remote learning environment in the spring. We've had the opportunity to be able to do a pilot program this summer. We're in our 4th week. It's going very well. There's approximately 50 students that are participating there, and they are in person. We're teaching kids how to wear masks or face coverings and extending the time for them. We are teaching them social distancing, and one example is even using a pool noodle so that they can understand what 6 feet is. We understand that this population also struggles with social distancing, so we've put some extra measures in place for our staff so that they are able to stay safe. And I'm very happy to share that we have had no incidents of COVID in the program this summer, and we have 1 more week to go. We are hoping to be able to continue to do that in the fall, and will be surveying parents to determine whether or not they feel comfortable having their children attend in the brick and mortar, or if they prefer to have the remote learning that is being proposed. In addition to that, at the beginning of the school year, we will be providing some transition activities to have students acclimate back into this brick and mortar setting, as well as if they are in remote, so that we can develop those relationships with our teachers. We have our counselors and school psychologists and mental health specialists that will be able to provide supports for students both in that brick and mortar as well as the remote setting. We were able to do that in the spring with mental health, and it was very successful. Our mental health specialists saw over 100 students during that time period. We will be resuming doing our evaluations in the fall. We have piloted some of that over the summer as well, and we're taking safety measures. They will be taking place in the brick and mortar. So students that need to be evaluated for special education services or 504 services, we will be able to do that. Our nurses have been consulting with our school district physician, Dr. Kalkowitz, as well as the Chester County Health Department to make sure that we have the safety measures in place that are needed when we're able to resume in the brick and mortar. And they have been in place over the summer in the pilot program. Our school caseworkers and social workers will be supporting families in need in looking at access to services that they may require. We'll move to the next, thank you. So a little bit about our special education and English learners in the cyber program. We will be holding IEP meetings for any students that have a disability that are enrolling in the cyber program. This will happen before the school year starts so that if their accommodations need to be changed because of the type of the environment changing, we will be able to accommodate students and how those accommodations will be made. There will be a special education teacher available for both the elementary and secondary program. And in fact, we just did the interviews this week. So we're very pleased at how things are going, and we feel very confident that we'll be able to have qualified teachers to be able to support our students in the cyber program. We will have English language English language development teachers available to provide supports in the cyber program as well. And we were also looking at providing some services for our English learners in the brick and mortar. We'll be surveying parents for those services too. Some instruction will be provided synchronously for the cyber program. That might be provided by our teachers, or it could be provided by paraprofessionals to support students that may need that in that cyber environment. The majority will be asynchronous, but it is important to be able to provide some synchronous instruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ranieri. I know some people have asked about some of the safety protocols. We do have that in our phased-in health and safety plan as well. As people are in the building, we have been using and following them all summer long, as our offices did open on June 15th and our programs did open on right after the 4th of July. I do have disinfecting. We're following CDC guidelines for cleaning. We are doing HVAC checks, ventilation checks. We have sprayers that we come in and spray and disinfect every evening, touch surfaces during the day. Screening, we are doing some self-monitoring and with temperatures. We're also following the Chester County Health Department guidelines with regard to screenings for anybody who may be sick. 6 feet of social distancing, we talked about that. So anybody that's in our buildings, we're doing that, and you'll see masks and face shields required for anyone in any of our buildings in the school district. Contact tracing, again, we are following the Department of Health, Chester County Department of Health for contact tracing. That's the role of the Department of Health. So if we have any reported cases or suspected cases, we do report that. If the timeline and expectations for quarantine currently is about, I think it's 14 days. Again, the Health Department gives us direction on all of those guidelines. Reporting positive cases to staff and families. Some people have asked about that. We have not gotten very clear guidance on that, other than the Department of Health will do that. But I will tell you that in this district, if we do get a positive case when we have students in our buildings, that we will notify the district and our parents of a positive case and potential exposure, even if the guidelines are nebulous. So a couple questions that some people may have about if we choose Westchester Cyber option at the beginning of this year, and then we phase back into a hybrid model, can the Westchester Cyber students, can they change back to the hybrid? Yes, we said yes, you could do that. So if you decide you want to try out our cyber option and you want to come back, if we kind of phase back into a hybrid model and you want to come back into school, but again, those are going to need to be at those transition points during the time of the year. First transition point is about that Thanksgiving break. So we'll ask you to commit at least until through that first marking period. So if you've already selected Westchester Cyber, I know many of you have done that, you can change your enrollment selection until August 7th. So if you've already selected, you are not locked in. If you would like to change that, you will have until August 7th, and we'll send out some follow-up information after, assuming our board approves this plan. If they don't approve the plan on Monday, then we'll come back to the drawing board with a different option. But once the board approves the plan, we'll send out options for parents. Second question about, okay, can we go the other way? If we go to the remote at the start of the year and we phase into a hybrid, can we then change to the Westchester Cyber program? Short answer is no. And this because it is a staffing concern for us. Once we get the staffing numbers, we have to, we see how many students are coming out of our classes and schools to lower some of those class sizes to go into the cyber program. We've got to transfer staff into the cyber program. We already have done some of that. And once we lock into that staffing, we don't have a lot of flexibility to bring more staff into our cyber program. Plus, it is something that there is a significant amount of training that's going on with our cyber school staff in terms of the digital curriculum that they're developing. It is our teachers, it's our curriculum, and it's not something that we can just transfer somebody right out of a classroom setting into that without some preparation. So if you're in the remote and you want to go to cyber after we start the school year, we are not going to be able to do that. We don't have the flexibility with staffing. So again, we want to make sure that we have our staffing process completed by August 17th, which means we need to have selections done by August 7th for the cyber program option, or for the remote learning option. So some of my final thoughts on all of this, we have to keep in mind that the science is still emerging on this. This is a global pandemic. These options are not optimal. They are not the absolute best practices for students to learn. If having kids learning all day online, or having kids wearing masks all day, or having kids in rows all day were best practices, schools would have been doing this years ago. So please understand, and from all the emails I've read and communications I've had with everybody in the community and our parents and our staff, I know you understand that these options, they're not optimal. And they're very difficult decisions that we're making to try to provide the best educational scenario for children in a very, very difficult time where nothing really seems to be the best way to do it. We all have to work together. We are going to need to have flexibility to move in and out of these different scenarios. As we watch what this virus does in our community, in our state, and in our country, we have to have that flexibility to move in and out, to go into a hybrid, start bringing kids back, get some contact with kids, and with a goal, ultimately bring everybody back with less of these restrictions, so that we can get back to learning in a more collaborative manner without being in rows and without being on a screen so much. But we got to have that flexibility based on what the virus is doing in our community, to move in and out, maybe into a hybrid, maybe into a full schedule again, or back into remote 2.0. There are a lot of questions that remain. I will tell you that we are committed as a school district. I know our school board is very committed to keep our community informed. I personally will do that. Our principals and our teachers will do that. We are committed to communicating every step of the way, everything that we can do to help and make this the best possible experience in a very difficult situation for our students, for our staff, for our parents, and our community. So with that, our next steps, if you have comments between now and the school board meeting, you can send them to our reopening@wcasd.net. We will make sure we share the comments with our board prior to the board voting on this recommended plan. Again, reopening@wcasd.net. We are working on childcare, as I said. We will have more information coming for some childcare options in our community, and we will start teasing that out and get more information out to our parents. Our school board is expected to vote on this proposed plan. That is August 3rd at 7 p.m. That is also a Zoom link, and we will also live stream that over Facebook as well. By August 7th, if the board does approve the plan, we would need parents to choose either the remote learning or the Westchester Cyber Program option so that we can properly staff all of that. August 17th, our new group of teachers come in. We have a lot of new teachers coming into this district. We had a lot of retirements over the summer, and we will start our week of new teacher induction, new teacher academy, and it will be very focused on that first day of school and what are some of the practices they're going to need to know and some of the skills they're going to need to have in order to get this year up and running for them. The following week, we have a week with all of our staff. Prior to all of that, we are running professional development sessions all summer long. We will continue to run them right up until the very first day of school, which for students will be August 31st. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris Cromwell. I believe has been managing some of the questions. If there's some questions, Chris, we can answer some of them now.
Certainly, Dr. Scanlon. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the parents who submitted questions. We're going to do our best to summarize in the broad questions that were asked and provide as much detail as we can. This first question is for Mr. Wagman. Can you explain what technical devices the students will receive? Will students get computers? There's questions about laptops and iPads, if you could answer that.
Yes, thank you for that question. All students K-5 will be issued iPad devices for grades 3, 4, and 5. It will also come with an attached keyboard attached to the case. Grades 6 through 12 will receive or already have a Windows laptop computer that's been part of our secondary one-to-one program for a number of years now. So yes, K-12, all students will have the device that they would normally use while in school.
Thank you, Mr. Wagman. Dr. Sokolowski, two separate questions that cover the same topic. Ask, do these schedules for remote learning include unified arts for the middle school? And are there elective options for the high school? If you could explain how the elective options will work for secondary schools.
Thank you, Chris. Great question. And when parents look back, especially at the middle school schedule from the spring, we have a 6-day rotating schedule with unified arts that are either offered 4 days out of the cycle or 2 or every day during a semester. And we crammed in a 4-day rotation, and that really just did not work. So what we have planned is a schedule that will afford the unified arts those opportunities to meet, those elective areas to meet, so that they can also engage in live instruction for students. And that's a really critical part about our middle school program, as our unified arts are areas where students can really have that opportunity to explore and investigate passions for learning. For the high schools, we do have a pretty broad array of elective opportunities for students that range from family consumer science to video productions to an array of world languages. We are working with students presently who are particularly looking at advanced levels in French, in Italian, in Latin, in different areas. And we will have an option for students, but we're still assessing the number of students who are interested in particular electives. Our cyber course selection guide, which is on our website, does have a complete listing and course descriptions for all of the electives at the high school and the middle school level.
Thank you, Dr. Sokolowski. The next couple questions are for Dr. Ranieri. Dr. Ranieri, a question came in, will my child have access to their guidance counselor? Can you answer that?
Yes, they will. We will have guidance support both for the remote as well as for the cyber program.
And then Dr. Ranieri, I'm generalizing, but a lot of questions came on about getting services to special needs students. I think you just might want to reiterate your message before, just to make sure clear.
As far as the in-person at the brick and mortar, we're focusing on our low incidence disabilities that I had described, but that certainly doesn't mean that we aren't going to be providing the services in our remote setting. Many of our teachers have gone through professional development in order to be able to provide more supportive services as we return to that remote setting. In addition, we will be providing paraprofessional support that may be able to help students in small groups or individually during that remote setting. We'll have to be taking the next month to be able to plan that out and to be able to better support our students, I think, in the fall than we were able to in the spring.
Thank you very much. Question for Dr. Scanlon. Very broad overall. Will families be provided with educational materials that they need, both in the remote learning setting and cyber?
Yes, we will have a lot of that will be digital. One of the questions that we've started to talk with our elementary principals about some of the materials that may have to be sent home with students. So that is all part of how we're going to distribute some of those materials. So yes, we will make sure that people have everything that they need. We also had some teachers ask if they are able to do their remote lessons from their classrooms. That is something that we can certainly do as well. I know some of our secondary teachers have asked about some science labs because they have those labs in those rooms where they can actually do the demonstrations for the kids. So we will do that. One other thing I just want to point out about choosing the Westchester Cyber versus the Remote 2.0, you automatically will be defaulted in Remote 2.0 if you do not choose Westchester Cyber. So the choice really is if parents want to choose the Westchester Cyber option. Otherwise, the default will be back into Remote 2.0.
Thank you, Dr. Scanlon. Last question now for Dr. Sokolowski. Can you explain how Allied Health and TCHS may work?
Yes, I have been in contact with TCHS and their administration there. They are really awaiting our plans and they will be accommodating. I did have a very specific conversation with the assistant principal at TCHS about the Allied Health program. And the hospitals are still right now deciding whether or not they will be able to accept students. But what the TCHS program has offered is that they will be able to, in small groups, be able to meet with students at TCHS. So those programs will be supported.
Thank you very much, Dr. Scanlon. That wraps up the general questions that came in at this time.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Again, if people have additional questions, please submit them to reopening@wcasd.net. If you have comments about for the board, we'll get those comments to the board through that link as well. We are, again, doing our best to make this very difficult situation as best we can for our students and our staff as we get this school year up and running. I will send a follow-up information email after this meeting. Again, all this information is on our website. This presentation and this recording of this presentation will also be on our website. We thank you so much for all that you're doing for our community and for our students, your children. We are all in this together, and we will continue to work together to make this the best opening that we can, albeit in a virtual world. So thank you so much for coming out and listening. Please be safe with your families, and you'll be hearing from us very shortly. Thanks again.